Okay, Dave Francoeur. I know I look really young, but I'm actually very old. I've been in the industry for over 40 years. And currently I'm with that gentleman over there, Danny Mobley, who owns the organization Downtime Trace. And love to talk to you about that. We won't have time in this meeting, but it's actually an app that you all should be very interested in because it allows you to push a button and send out a request for service, whether it's preventive maintenance or repairs, to a bunch of field people that would be willing to fix it, and they will respond saying, I'd like to come in and do the service for you. So happy to talk to any of you offline after this to talk about it. I just want to take 2 seconds out. My goal today is, as I said, I've been in the industry for over 40 years. I've had thousands of people report through to me in the healthcare organizations. And I will tell you that I have passions about many things, but one in particular is around communication. Unsuccessful communication will not be successful in servicing medical equipment. End of discussion. And so I hope I'm probably not going to tell you a whole lot different than you don't already know. I hope to put it on a slant and put it in a package differently than what you've had in the past. And hopefully you can take it away in some form or fashion. What's interesting is I see in speaking to a bunch of you guys, we're seeing technicians, managers, we're seeing clinical staff, right? Which is awesome. And so this hopefully is something that you guys can use. I've put this together in a way that if you want, you can get it afterwards, and you could use this either for yourself or your teams. So maybe you can use it for a little bit of a training thing. But I can't emphasize enough how important it is around successful communication. We all think we know what communication is, but real communication is somebody saying something and somebody else actually hearing exactly what that person wanted to say. And that doesn't happen very often. So let's see if I got this right. Not yet. Still not yet. Oh boy. Say what? One more time. I got to do here? Oh, pointed at it? Okay. By the way, I don't hear so good, so if you just speak up a little bit. That ain't doing it. Let's try. All right, how about if I do this? You know, there's always technical difficulties. So I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be honest with you guys and share something a little bit funny. So I actually did this presentation 3 nights ago in Dallas to the North Texas Biomed Group. And you want to talk about a challenging opportunity? We held it in a bowling alley. They literally took the first 5 lanes of the bowling alley, put the chairs around. The rest of the bowling alley was still bowling. The speaker system was still blaring rock and roll music, and I tried to do this presentation. So you want to talk about a challenging communication? That's what it was. So anyways, let's talk about this. I want you guys to walk away with, I'm going to go over 3 primary categories, right? Your personality, what is communication, and how do we effectively listen? And we're going to go through different scenarios and different things as I go through that. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So I don't know if I want to do this. You guys tell me. What the plan was, I actually had 2 pieces of paper here. And this is a very rare scenario, right? Somebody calls up and says, I have a problem. And they go through the details around what the problems are. And the plan was I was going to give you this, and then you were going to have to tell him what it said without showing the paper and go down. I did this the other night at the bowling alley. It was amazing the difference between what was on the paper. And by the time we got to the back of the teams, there were 2 teams. I mean, they weren't even close to the same story. We've all played the telephone games as a kid, but you don't realize how real value that is. And as you're going to see through this presentation, it's even more complicated than that. I mean, if we sat in this room and you really weren't distracted other than by me, I can guarantee you by the time we got back to the room, the messages would be vastly different from what the reality of it was. And that's the stuff that we deal with every day, and it's going to continue to do that. Excuse me. So as I said, personality, communication, listening, and then the nonverbal cues, which are pretty significant. So me personally, I learn from pictures, right? Literally pictures. You can tell me anything you want. I don't comprehend it very well. I can read something, I comprehend it kind of. Show me something, give me a picture, I retain it really, really well. It's just so I can recall the pictures and the stories that go with it. But if we're just gonna have a conversation and you want me to do some kind of math equation, you're just gonna walk me through it, I promise you I won't retain it. So this picture to me is fairly decent representation of what I think I'm trying to achieve today, right? So a person wants to talk to somebody else. There's all kinds of complexities, which we're going to go through in the next 45 minutes or so. But around the messaging and the feedback, it's encoding and decoding. And I will go to the clinicians in the room, to the service techs in the room. You have in your mind a real problem. You need to convey that problem in a way that they successfully hear it so that they can be successful in their servicing. And if that's not done, then all it does is slow up the process, because they're going to try to go fix something that's not really the problem because they didn't understand it properly. And I see it every day. Again, throughout different places, I'll stop for a second, but I can tell you, I was with Siemens for the last 3 years, responsible for nearly 700 technicians and lots of over 25,000 pieces of imaging equipment. And I'm telling you as a fact, 90% of the service entity, though, when the customers, you people, when you called me and told me about your displeasure, it was never about the service event. It was all about the fact that they didn't hear what I asked. You didn't respond when I want. You didn't tell me when you were here, when you left, that you actually fixed it. That's crazy. It's so easy. And I hope to help bridge some of that stuff. By the way, anytime anybody has a question, please just stop me, ask me.
Remember something vividly about communication went wrong in one of those service circumstances?
I can give you 2 examples. And I'm dying to look at the facial expressions on the clinicians in the room. Technician walks in and so picture a moment. Technician walks into the hospital, gets in front of the equipment, and so the clinician is excited because the technician showed up. And the first thing the technician said, I've never seen this thing before. I don't even know what I'm doing. How well is that? That go over pretty well, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what happens at that point because there's no credibility. There's nothing. So that's a problem. The other one is, and this happens so often, is they didn't tell me when they showed up. They didn't tell me when they were here. They didn't tell me when they finished. They actually just left and maybe left a note, but most of the time they didn't do that either. So you could have been using it. You would have loved to have known what was wrong with it so that you could then maybe prevent it from happening again. There's all kinds of just silly things. So yeah, thanks for asking the question. So this is what, again, these are my 2 pieces of paper. I don't think we're going to bother to be too disruptive, but I plan on giving you one and you one. You would read it and you could use it to talk to the first person. But after that, you'd play the telephone game that we all played when we were kids. And I can promise you, it's with the bowling alley the other night. It wasn't even close. So anyways, so the point I was trying to make in that, and I guess I'll go ahead and spend the time now. The point I was trying to make in that whole process is 9 out of 10 times, a technician is probably going to be standing in front of a piece of equipment they're working on, or they're in a car heading somewhere. And they're going to pick up the phone, and their dispatcher or you directly are reaching out to them, and you're going to tell them the problem that you're having. What's the likelihood that they're going to retain what it is that someone's telling them, and then the accuracy behind that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that much, if that much. So that's the point. And so again, the telephone game was just nothing but try to get people interactive. So, okay. So we're going to start out with personalities. Everybody has one. My personal opinion is that it comes from your upbringing, where you came from, right? Your family, your culture, your history, the town that you lived in, the school that you went to, all your experiences. It makes up who you are. And I don't know about most of you guys, but I can't really change who I am at this point. There's things that I can do. There's things that I can do shortly. I can mask over on a short time basis. But reality is our personality is our personality. And so, the perspective is around there's unique patterns, there's thought, feelings, behaviors, biological and environment. Any of you ever done personality studies? Right? Yeah. So I've done more than I care to, but there's 2 in particular that I refer to pretty regular. Anybody ever seen either one of these? Either the DISC or the Myers-Briggs? Okay. So throughout my career, I've probably done the DISC and used the DISC with my staff numerous times. That's the one I'm most comfortable with. That's the one I'm going to go through. What I want to share with you guys is, again, I'm keep going. So we got an hour. I'm about to spend an hour with you guys to do things that some people spend their entire lives on. when you focus on people's personalities and the studies and how they impact and what it means, and then you do things around communication and how it impacts and how you can get better at it, or around the listening skills. People spend their entire lives doing that, and I'm going to try to do it in an hour. So all I can hope is that I can wet your whistles and that you guys come up with some kind of an interest. You may take some of the tools away, but you're going to have to spend the time and energy similar to what I've done for the last 40 years. This is intriguing to me, and it's such an easy thing to fix if people are interested and they want to make changes. But so, look, at a high level, regardless whether you use DISC, Myers-Briggs, there's many, many more out there. It boils down to a couple major points, right? So in a high level, on a personality perspective, you're either high strung. By the way, I'm a type A. I'm very much type A. I'm, quick to respond. I have all the answers. I'm never wrong. It's not always a good place to be, but that's where I live. I can't help it. Then you have others, which, not so much. So I'm actually going to walk through each one of them quickly. But as you can see, right, D, that's me, not just David, but D, outspoken, quick to react, feel like I'm always right. It's a bad habit, and I'm working hard at trying to not necessarily demonstrate that as often as I do, and in a way that's not so offensive, or whatever the case may be. As I'm describing these things, by the way, I'm hoping and likely what you're all doing is thinking of a person that represents this: boss, coworker, employee, spouse, kid, right? Because every one of us, whether we like it or not, is representative in something in these four categories I'm about to share with you. So the I, outspoken, but more receptive and more amenable, right? The I is going to be somebody that probably wants to make sure that you hear them, they hear you, but I still want to tell you I'm right, but I'm going to do it a little more friendly and a little more encouraging, right? So around the S, right? Cautious and reflective. What I would tell you is my personal experience on this is I had one of the best coworkers I've ever had in my life. This was back about 25 years ago. She was brilliant, and I loved working with her, and we made a phenomenal team. But I'll share with you, the first few months of our working relationship, it was kind of strained a little bit. My being the D, her being the S, I would just say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And I mean, it would take weeks for her to get on board and figure out what was going on. Once I realized, and once we did the Myers-Briggs and we got things going and I realized she was an S, what I found out was if I got together with her in the afternoon and I said to her, look, here's where I want to go. Here's how I want to get there. These are the reasons that I want to go. She would go home that night, process that, and come back the next day in a totally different way, receptive to whatever it is that we want to talk about, and have input and feelings like she could contribute to achieve the goal that we were trying to do. Once I understood that, it was an amazing, amazing relationship and how successful we could be. So again, you all sit here in varying entities within the different things that we do in the imaging space, managing equipment, taking care of patients, and processing them through the system. From a radiology perspective, the biggest thing you care about is making sure that you can process your patients, and do it in an accurate and appropriate way. And when the equipment's down, you feel helpless and you don't know what else to do, right? Administration's all over you because you're not hitting the financial targets that you need to hit. You're not keeping the customers happy. But I can honestly tell you that I know as a fact, while clinicians care, they don't understand a lot of that. They don't know how to process that. They don't know what that means. And so if we can get into a conversation, and I'm going to look at you guys in particular, right? If you can help the technicians understand, it's not just I'm fixing the equipment, and understanding that the clinicians are under a lot of stress and a lot of pain, right? I mean, Danny actually has just published a thing that says, and you can all judge whether or not this is accurate, but there's a figure there somewhere, $8,000 a minute when an MRI or CT is down. A minute. And I can tell you when I was with Siemens, I literally had to tell customers once in a while they were going to be down for 10 to 12 weeks. That's not a good conversation. But if I wasn't somewhat good at communicating, that could get really ugly really fast. It did anyways. I mean, let's be honest. Who wants to buy a car and being told they can't drive it for 12 weeks after they buy it? And they're still making payments on it, by the way, right? I mean, it's not an easy conversation. But having the skills and the tools to do that in a way that's different can make it more successful. I'll just leave it at that. It's not going to make it great, but it can make it more successful. All right, and then the I, or the C rather, skeptical and questioning, always. It doesn't mean that they're not on board. It doesn't mean that they don't buy into what you're doing, but they're going to continually say, why? How come? Can't we try it a different way? Doesn't mean they don't buy it, but I'm telling you, the more, if you haven't done this, it's like wicked. It's like a 10, 15-minute thing. You might have to pay 20 bucks, but maybe not. But I would strongly encourage you guys to do one of them. Learn about yourself. If you have teammates, get them to do it and have conversations with each other, because I'm telling you, the value that it'll bring is far outweighs itself and pays for itself. Here's the biggest thing for me. Picture. That picture to me represents exactly what I'm talking about. Every one of us fall into one of these categories. That's where we live primarily. But every single one of us also have traits to go to the other spots. And so there are instances, depending on the situation, the environment, what happened this morning when you left the house, what happened on your way to work, what happened when you got to work, all those things are going to be contributing factors, which may make it at any moment in time, depending on the circumstances, that I might migrate a little bit to one or the other. Also, when I get in front of you, and you are of another type A like me, and before I became much more mature and older, my immediate reaction was to just be offended or be upset or challenged. Well, then that's just going to make you go into a different spot too, right? So all these things are contributing factors. The more we understand about this, the more we are. Again, I'd love to spend 2 days here doing nothing but this. Each one of you guys take this test and us walking through and role playing and doing things. Can't do it, but you understand my point. I'm also going to share with you guys, this is something you really should understand. And I'm going to give you an example. So one of my greatest mentors, he was my boss at 2 different places, Aramark and Sodexo. His name is Steve Cannon. Love the man to death. He is amazing. But it took me several years to figure this out. Like you as radiology directors, there are times that you are under stress. The equipment's down. The radiologists are upset because they're not getting the studies the way they want. Administration is all upset because you're not getting your finances, this, that, and the other thing. So you're under a lot of pressure. They're under a lot of pressure. And now you need to have a communication with them to talk about why you're not where you need to be. May or may not be legit, whatever, you may or may not be able to control it, but you need to have a conversation. When Steve and I first started working together, we struggled tremendously. And I could never understand why. And then I figured out through this and whatnot, what happens is all of us, by the way, we all do this. When we're under stress, we go to the place that we're the strongest, and it becomes exponentially more, what's the word I want to use, viable, yeah, right? So Steve was like I have to have all the data. I have to, I got to get, so every time he gets stressed, it was more data, more data, more data. And then I'd give it to him and he'd go like, all right, well now more and more and more. I mean, I was just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff because it was making him feel better because he felt like he was in control. It wasn't doing crap, excuse my French, in terms of helping us get to where we need to be, but it was making him feel better because he was in his comfort zone and that's where he needed to be. Once I understood that, then my conversations with him went to a whole different place because I was able to sit with him and say, okay, I know you need data. And here's the data he asked for, because not giving him wasn't the answer either. But I was able to do it and show it to him in a way to help him understand that we're in control, we're getting to where we need to be, I'm managing the situation. I know the outcome still isn't what you want it to be, but I'm able to help him get comfortable around that so he would back off a little bit. I'm telling you, you have no idea how valuable this can be. All right, I'm about to jump into the next thing, communication. Any questions or thoughts around this particular situation? Okay. Communication. Every single one of us in this room thinks we know what that means. And then to a degree we do, right? There's varying things, and yes, we do. We understand communication. biggest thing from my perspective around communication is I'm saying stuff right now. What I don't know is how are you receiving it? Because I guarantee you, I don't care how good it is, how good I am or not, you're not receiving it exactly the way I'm intending to deliver it. So right off the bat, we're not on an equal plane. But it's not to say that we don't have the right intention, we're not heading in the right direction. It's just it is. So here's 5 major areas. I'm going to go through them all actually. But I put this presentation together with the idea that if you want to show this to somebody, you can just, this slide speaks to it all. But let's go through each one of them. So direct and indirect. Let's meet. Hey, how about getting together? They mean the same thing, but I can tell you when we go back to that personality thing that we talked about, they are going to be interpreted 2 very different ways. And what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter where you land because we're all going to exist. The job's still going to happen. But if we want to be more successful, we can do it in a way that's more intentional and meaningful. And so all I'm saying is, first of all, as leaders, you have a choice. Where do you want to fall on that spectrum? And second of all, how you want people to receive you and how do you want to be seen? And you have those choices. And I would strongly encourage you to think about what that looks like and how you go from there. Right? So this one's assertive, passive, aggressive, whatever. I'd like to meet around 10 a.m. if that works for you. I need you to be here 10 a.m., no excuses. I'm sure we've all done both of those. I'm also saying that we need to be, and look, let's also talk about this. There are times when we might want to be one, but we really should be the other, right? We've got a situation where an employee, a patient, an administrator, we got to step outside of the comfort zone and we need to send a message. That's okay too. Intentional. That's all I'm saying. Be intentional. Be mindful and intentional. Formal, informal, right? How are you today? What's up? We all do it. Environment plays a big part in it. Family, friends, the bar, the office, in front of patients. All those things are all contributors, and we're going to get into those in a really deep way. It might be time to talk about the project. What project? Right? Implied, right? We need to discuss the project now. We can just keep going on. We're just one more, and then we go from there. But you can start. You're starting to see, right? You need to draw the plan, pull the team together, and execute. What's your thoughts on the team working together to successfully complete the project? I don't know. I don't know how to explain it anymore. I mean, it is what it is. It's pretty black and white. You just have to, and as you have an opportunity as leaders, managers, coworkers, as you have an opportunity to talk to people, as you're formulating your ideas around what you're going to do and how you're going to do it, these are times when you can think about, well, is this a time when I should flex up, flex down, just come at it equally, right? What am I trying to achieve, and how do I want to go about achieving it? So as I've said over and over and over again, communication is one person trying to get their point across to the other. And I can speak to this from my own opinions in a gazillion different ways. 40 years in servicing, that's all I've done is service. I've been a customer service person for over 40 years of my life. Actually, before that, at 9 years old, I started as a paper route. So it's been nothing but customer service my entire life. And it's the likelihood that someone has told me that they're upset and the reason why, and I've completely understood that, is minimal at best. And I think I'm pretty good at understanding what I need to understand. And it's still a challenge. You think I'm beating the horse enough? So the last area that of the 3 areas is listening, right? We all listen. You're listening to me right now. You listen to music. You listen. Everybody listens. But man, there are so many levels of listening. It's insane. And I want to try to go through a bunch of them. The biggest thing that most of us do that we definitely need to try to change, we listen to respond. We don't listen to hear. And that is just, and especially from a technical perspective, right? Technicians are really, really bad at that. I guess I'll go off on a tangent for a second in general about technicians again, I think there's always value from like your guys' perspective when we share a little bit about ourselves. And by the way, I've also been a technician. Um, we are, most of us inherently are introverts. We would much rather be in the basement with a piece of equipment sitting at our desk fixing it than we would be standing in front of you all taking a beating because the equipment's not working, right? We're not comfortable with that. And when you go to school, most of them have 2-year degrees or they've been to the military, or not many of them have bachelor's degrees. How many of you guys have bachelor's degrees? Okay, so I mean, when we go to school, we're not taught what I call soft skills, right? We're taught how to fix things. We're taught how do electrons flow, how to use an oscilloscope, how to use a DVM. I know oscilloscopes are outdated, but you know what I'm saying. We're not taught how to do the soft skills. We don't have any idea, and we struggle at that. And here gets better. So you've now been in the field. You're doing a phenomenal job. You're the best technician I have. You've been doing it for 15 years. I have a supervisory position available. I promote you. Okay, you're really good at fixing equipment. What's the likelihood you're successful at fixing people that you now have to manage, or fixing the customer? Yeah, you got it. Can you do this? A little bit negative actually, but that's where we come from, right? And I guess what I'm saying is, and this when you think of the size of the United States and all the people that have X-ray equipment and all the people that are sitting there all roles, I'm not even hitting a pin needle. But if you guys, if nothing else, you leave this room and you can understand that likely that technician is standing in front of you that is a phenomenal technician that can fix your equipment to get you back up, probably has zero to little communication skills, period, the end. And if you guys, I know that in the heat of the moment, the passion, it's like, I just want my thing fixed. But I can tell you, if you can make that person feel like you at least can appreciate the position that they're in, I think you'll actually get it get it fixed quicker. Yeah, get that out. Just a little challenging. All right, where are we at? All right, so the importance of listening, and I'm gonna belabor this point beyond belief, because although personalities are involved, communication is a vehicle by which listening has to occur. The listening aspect is the one that all of us struggle with, technicians probably more than ever. So, clearly comprehending what the person's saying, understanding what the person's saying, acknowledging what the person's saying. If you do that right, you're going to build more trust. I guess I'll tell it now. This is a real life example. I've had several of these instances in my life, but this one particular one I'm going to go into. So I had a situation in a hospital. Actually, it was in upstate New York, not Rochester, but close to it, Amsterdam. Okay. So they have a CT. And I'm telling you, as a fact, I was on the board of Springfield Technical Community College in Massachusetts. I got to hire any student I want to come work for me. I hired the best of the best of the best. I'm telling you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, if I was going to go on and be worked on and I was going to have medical equipment, this is the guy that I want to make sure he was the last one to touch it. Dead serious when I say all that. Every time this guy fixed a piece of equipment, I would get a phone call from the clinicians telling me how much it wasn't right, it wasn't working, it was a real bad experience, on and on and on and on. It's because he didn't talk to them at all, right? He was just grumpy, didn't want to talk to people. He was an awesome technician, but an absolute terrible communicator, beyond belief. It didn't matter what he did, it was always wrong. Customer just would call me constantly. Fast forward a little bit longer. I get this new guy. I bring him in. This is true story, excuse me, does not have a degree, can't spell biomed. No, has never he literally used to be what's called a tool and die person. Anybody know what that means? Right? He was a tool and die person, came from outside of our industry. I replaced him with that guy I talked about a second ago. The CT machine was down for 2 weeks. Now, I used to get a phone call if it was down for an hour. It was down for 2 weeks. I didn't even know it was down. Happened to be going by, going to see the customer. I said, how's things? Oh, the CT's been down for a couple of weeks, but it's all right. Mike's got it. I'm like, what? Yeah. Mike took him donuts in the morning, took the guy fishing on the weekends, and continually communicated with him about what was going on and what he was trying to do to get it fixed. The guy knew that he was doing the best that he could with where he was at. By the way, that was my brother. He works for Trimedics, and he's been the manager of the year for like 3 years running, and back a while back. But those are true stories. Now, does that tell you how important it is that a technician can fix equipment? Yeah, we all want it fixed. Let's be clear about that. But he literally was doing the best he could, but it was more about the communication and the value that it brings. And I can't tell you how much it brings. I mean, look, we all want the same thing, right? And I try to do this all the time. I try to relate it to, let's get outside of our profession. Air conditioning. I live in Dallas. The last thing you want to do is have your air conditioning out in July or August. You call the company and they don't respond. They're not calling you, tell you they're not coming. I mean, nobody wants to be there. It doesn't matter what the situation is. No one wants to be. When I used to have to tell a customer they weren't going to have their equipment for 12 weeks, what do I think the best thing to do is put my head in the sand and just pretend like it's not happening? Oh, hell no. I got on the phone. I put the facts on the table. And I told them that I was going to do the best I could to cut that as much as I possibly could. And I would follow up every day with a text, an email, or a call. This is what I tried today to try to make it different. They didn't like it any more than I did, but they knew that, well, what were they going to do? Kill me? Shoot me? I mean, go somewhere else? Well, if they could have gone somewhere else, they would have already done it. All I'm saying is that I can't express enough how, and you guys know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know.
So I have just a quick interjection. One of the things management hates when I say it, a trained monkey can fix a machine, but they can't fix the customer. You know, a trained monkey, they can turn a wrench, but they cannot speak to a customer and fix the customer.
Yeah, did everybody get to hear that? So thank you. Yeah. And I stopped saying those words because people, but I hear you. So what I will tell you is throughout my career, I will tell you this all the time. We got to the point where I actually built a testing tool, if you will, a qualifying tool to hire technicians. And what it did was, it was their ability to communicate more so than it was to fix things because of that very nature, right? I can teach people how to fix things, right? It's just practice, it's education, it's training. Most of the time, people can maybe learn a little bit, but if they don't have the natural nature and in their 20s and 30s to communicate, it's almost impossible to get them to change. And I'll tell you another little story, and I hope nobody's going to be offended by what I'm about to say, but this is my experience around the military. Who's here from the military? Right? Awesome. I'm just going to tell you this. I will, every opportunity I can, I will hire somebody that's been trained to be a biomed from the military because they are the most qualified people in the world, unquestionably. Not even a question. It's beyond reproach. But here's what you get every time. And I'm just going to be curious to look at the three of you that raised your hand. You get one of two things. You get I'm from the military. Don't tell me what to do. I got it. And they just do their thing and you cannot tweak them. Or I'm from the military and I can't do a damn thing unless you tell me what to do. I can't get anywhere in the middle. Neither one, there's not one that's better than the other, but that's what I end up getting. But every time I know the thing's going to be fixed. It is going to be fixed perfectly. That's, so again, these are things that we learn. And by the way, those go back to personality and communication. And it also goes back to what kind of person are you, right? Because those two people, those two different ones, that also has a lot to play with who you are as a person and what the military did to you in terms of changing you and making who you are. So is that fairly okay? You kind of agree with that?
It's hard for me to say because I'm not biomed and I'm not a DRT.
Okay.
So I'm imaging completely different. I was
Yep.
legal, so.
Okay. How about you?
I think that's true to a point. Coming from the military, you've been put through stuff that makes everything else easier. So
Yep.
you have this can-do natural attitude that anything that comes your way, you can just be able to take care of it. Because when I got out of the military 20 years ago, I said, I'm gonna get paid to do this. I work after hours, they'll still pay me, they'll pay me more. It's just too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
How about you?
I'm fortunate. I was in the full line in the military when I was training for it, but then I was a customer service rep for a while.
Oh, that's great. That's probably a good combination.
One of the things as a environment tech always tells me other things. You have to fix the basics with the staff before you fix the machine.
Right.
And that's my approach.
Yeah.
A lot of times because one of the things that this is going to grow. I said, everything's broke. But
Yeah.
then I said, tell me what you didn't do yesterday that you want to do today. Because a lot of times the layperson don't say it's oh, it don't work.
Right.
Don't work could be just the wheels don't work.
Yeah. Yes, yes, and yes. So that goes back to Danny asked for more examples. So this is one of my favorites, right? So this isn't radiology, but similar situation, bedside ICU, and the bedside monitor is not working. Just a black screen. Okay. Everybody's jumping to conclusions. What's that means? Well, in fact, it was as easy as you think it is. They had to go back, and this thing in the back of the machine, which is ONOFF, was in the OFF position. Okay. So as a technician, what are you going to do? And this could be a MRI, CT, could be any of those things, right? Could be a portable mammo, ultrasound, could be any of those things, right? Because that happens. There's a time when things are broken that they're not really broken. Well, as a technician, I had many experiences, and these are all true stories. I had one guy just like berated the ICU nurse like you can't believe. Well, how successful do you think he's going to be the next time he has to go up there? And then, and I can tell you as a person, I was sitting one night having dinner, got called in after hours at 2:00 in the morning. We were at a bar, but anyways, I go in, and that's what the situation is. And I turned to the nurse and I said, listen, this is my fault. I didn't do a good enough job when I trained you on how to run this machine and what it looks like. I mean, I had a friend forever, right? Because she wasn't worried that I was going to go tell her boss that she didn't turn the button on. So all I'm saying is, man, there's so many different ways to go about this, right?
Like 2 weeks ago, I had someone say, "Oh, the blood pressure machine don't work." I'm like, okay, I'll say, bring it over. So she brings it over. I look at it, push the plug in.
Yeah.
It works. She's like, Jerome, you kidding me? That's all it took. But I didn't say nothing.
Yeah, you know, I guess what I'm going to say is, again, for you guys that are clinicians, I mean, again, I know that you're really busy and you can't always do this, but maybe some of your staff can help. When a technician does show up, one of the greatest things you can do for them as well as yourselves is tell them what was going on when it happened, right? I get it. It's broken. You can just say broken and walk away. But if you can say, this is what was happening, this is what we were doing at the time, that will bring a lot of value for them starting to diagnose what's going on. I know you don't always have the time, but it's something to consider. So effective listening, right? Leaning in, nodding, acknowledging, you know, those are important things. I kind of get through these things quickly, right? You know, so things that can be distraction, noisy environment. Oh, squirrel. I'm notorious for that. Right. Stay neutral, right? Don't be going. Oftentimes as technicians, you know, you guys call and you tell us what the problem is, or where you think it is, or whatever the case is, and I know what that is. And reality is, if we had had a little further conversation, it might not have been what I think it is, and I probably could have been more prepared when I showed up to be able to address it. And so again, if we can get more information, clarity up front, it's going to, two things are going to happen. One is a more likelihood that we're going to be successful on the first visit. And the second thing is I can come prepared for that. And then the third thing, in my opinion, is from your guys' perspective, is I get a little more wiggle room, right? When I can be successful and I can come in and hit it and fix it, the next time I'm not right the first time, you're going to give me a little bit more room than if I'm the first guy I described earlier. I get no room. you're just a bum. So as I said, right, stronger relationships, enhanced learning opportunities. I'm going to grow personally and professionally. I'm going to be more productive if we're having successful communications, right, and better conflict resolution, right. If you as a clinicians are already upset with me as an individual, as a technician, what's the likelihood that you're even going to listen to what it is that I'm telling you that I have to do? And how much wiggle room are you going to give me? Little to none. There you go. It's all about being respectful on both sides. It's just about being respectful. I want to get to, so you guys can see this, right? Listening promotes engagement, all the other stuff. It really does. I mean, you know this from your own staff or your peers or whatever the case may be, right? So all I would ask is think about it, practice it. Is think about what we've been talking about. Think about where you sit on the continuum of all these things, and how does that impact you and the people that you work with, and ultimately the goals that you're trying to achieve, which is in your guys' case, get your patients through, get accurate results, and do what you got to do. So this one to me is so important, and I'm telling you, there's a guy named Manny Roman. I don't know how many people you guys know Manny Roman is. He's been in this industry for 50 years. He is, if you guys have technicians that work on equipment, likely that they went to his school to be trained on how to be radiology technicians. He and I are personal friends, and we've done a bunch of presentations in the space. And I can't say this enough, right? So your nonverbal cues are probably as important or more important than everything else that we've talked about. Let me walk through a couple examples. Space, this is a chart that pretty much works universally, right? If you're pretty close to a person, you're going to be here. If you're in a social event, you're going to be way out here. But it's space is important. And if a technician's right up in your face, probably not going to be very successful, right? So your voice, if I'm coming across, it's not going to work. It's not going to work, right? And so your pitch, your tone, all those things are important. This is one of my favorite things. You mind if I use you? So handshakes, right? This, to me, if I come in like this, I'm trying to tell you I'm dominant. I'm going to tell you what I'm doing. I don't care what you're doing. If I come in like this is neutral. This is us. We're going to try to figure this out. If I come in like this, I'm in trouble because you're going to tell me exactly where I stand and what it looks like. And it's not usually very successful. So, but people don't even realize some of this stuff, right? Like I was up the other night, Thursday night, I'm at this North Texas Biomed thing, and I'm introducing myself. It's like most of you, when you came in the room, I came over. But I can't tell you how many people, they come in like this. I'm like, come on, you got to think more of yourself. Be assertive. It's okay. It's important. Eye contact, right? It's crazy. You have to do it. And by the way, I'm gonna tell you another little thing. These are little tricks. If you ask me a question, you say to me, hey, I want to know what you're gonna do to fix my thing. If you see me look to the right as I'm giving you an answer, I'm probably lying. I'm probably trying to make something up to tell you what it is that I'm doing. You see me look to the left as I'm thinking about it, I'm trying to recall a scenario that helps me figure out what the solving of the problem is. I know you guys are gonna think this is crazy, but these are all true things. Here's another one. You all watch, at one point, at one time, you all have watched debates or public things on TV. You've seen politicians talking. Here's what I'm gonna tell you. When they say they're gonna do something, and immediately after, they do this, they do this, they do this, they're lying. They touch their face, or they adjust their collar, they're probably lying. I mean, these are things that once you get to know and you understand, can have a huge value in the communication that you're doing with people. You roll your eyes, right? I mean, you're telling a technician how important this is and whatnot, and he goes, oh yeah, that feels a lot of confidence. That really instills how happy you're going to be, right? Here's another one. You guys know all these things, but you're sitting there, and let's just say you're sitting across from each other. I got my arms folded. Oh yeah, that usually means I'm excited as hell and I want to hear what you got to say, right? And they sit there, the technician comes in and does this. Manny calls this framing, right? Yeah, okay, I'm really listening to what you got to say. I'm just quiet. I got to go fix your machine, right? I mean, all these things are different things. Same thing with, I'm sitting there and, you know, you and I are talking and I sit and I cross my leg, but I cross it towards you, right? I'm receptive. I want to hear what you have to say. I really don't care what you have to say. I'm trying to, you know, I just want to get out of this conversation as fast as I can. I'm telling you, these things, I'm fascinated with this stuff, which is why I've spent all the time that I have. And it also helps me with my teams, I think. They might not agree, but I think. And by the way, once you know all these things, as it says, you can use it for you or against you, right? This page here is literally just so, again, if you take this presentation, it's all in one spot. It's just it says all the same thing I just showed you. The picture guy had to show you the last one, but for those of you that have to have the word guy, this is here for you just to have it. This next one, remember the picture guy? I am the picture guy. That's my picture, and this is a true thing. If nothing else, think of this imagery in your head, right? So let's just call this, you know, the technician, right? And so personality's involved. His personality's involved. Communication's involved. The listening, all that stuff that I just went through for the last 45 minutes, that's all there. And it's not just it's not an A or a B. It's multiple shades of gray in all three of these areas. So think of the multiple factors that we've got going on here. Now, that's just to tell the story. Now you got your staff who you're paying to stand around because the equipment's not working. Oh, that's making you feel good. And they're real excited about it. You got patients. They're real excited about the fact that they prepared for this study and now you're going to tell them that they can't. Oh yeah, I want to be the one telling them that. And by the way, I've been on that side a few times. Compliance, right? You got your whatever you got to deal from a compliance perspective that you're dealing with. You know your finances are being impacted because you're not making the revenue that you say you had to make. And the same thing with the technicians because they're being held to, hey, you got to get processed, get it fixed. You got to do 3 calls a day, whatever the case may be. You got physicians that are screaming up and down, the C-suite screaming up and down. And oh, by the way, likely something in the morning upset your Cheerios, right? Something happened. You didn't have gas when you got in the car. The car wouldn't warm up. You didn't have a good breakfast. I don't care what it is. I promise you, something that happened between the time that you left the house or got out of bed to the time that you got in front of this piece of equipment, something wasn't perfect. Or it was absolutely spectacular, and the last thing you really want to do is be working on a piece of equipment because you want to go enjoy the happy thing. Something is impacting it one way or the other. Now you layer on all this stuff on the top, right? All the things that we talked about. There were not good eye contact, the nonverbal cues, the distractions of all the other types. You layer all that on. You take all of this, which is a lot, and you multiply that out by the different variations you can have. What's the likelihood that we have a successful communication interaction? I'll say it, pretty damn small. So as many of these things that you can eliminate, the more success communication will happen. And the more success, let's be honest, we get where we want to be. You get the equipment back up and running, they get on to their next service call. Last thing would be, so from a technician standpoint, and by the way, you guys can look at this too, but what I would say is, as much as we can, as all of us can do, you want to do this in 3 separate areas, right? You want to feel. People want to feel that you feel that you are that they're important, right? So when you as the clinician turns to the technician, I feel this way. Here's why I feel this way. I'm disappointed over the fact that this thing's not working right now. Here's why I'm feeling that way. Here's what it means. It gives the technician some sense of what that means or what it looks like. The technician needs to say something back. I feel what you're feeling. I understand that you're not in a good space right now because this thing's not working. That helps start to bring some synergies together on both sides, the feel. And there's the I felt, right? So I need to help you understand this isn't the first time I've been down this rodeo. I felt where you've been before, right? It's the uniqueness. It's take away the uniqueness. This isn't the first time we've seen this problem, right? And you need the felt in terms of I've been here before, and here's why I'm not happy about it now. Here's what I want to make sure we can try to do differently in the future. And then the found, right? Provide a solution in terms of what does that look like? And these are, if all of us can get in these 3 things in our form of communication, I believe the more successful we're going to be, and where we need to go and what we need to do. I actually told you the Mike and Tom story, and that's really it for me. Questions, comments, thoughts, concerns?